Now that we have the basics down of how a guide works with our motion, we're going to customize a little bit and create a scene that we're going to marry Illustrator skills with Adobe Animate. So the first thing that I need to do is create a new animation. I'm going to keep it at ActionScript 3.0. I'm going to draw your attention though that the size of the stage in our animations by default is a width of 550 and a height of 400. We're going to remember that when we're creating something in Illustrator. So if I hit OK, I now have a stage here that has those dimensions. You'll notice on the right-hand side, it has a size, a width of 550 by 400. And I want to go back over to Illustrator. So I have created my Illustrator file to fit those dimensions. And the way that I did that is I went to File, New, and when I created something new, it gives me the option to create a custom setting. So I entered in 550 by 400, made sure the orientation is landscape. And one thing that I want to draw your attention to is down at the bottom here, the color mode. Make sure that the color mode is changed to RGB. And the reason why we do that is CMYK colors in Illustrator. Illustrator is used a lot for print material. And when we're printing something off, the color mode needs to be CMYK. That's how printing deals with the setup of colors. But whenever we're dealing with animation or video or motion graphics, we're in a different spectrum. We're in more of a screen-based world. So we need to change the color mode to RGB. And that's how we work with colors when we're dealing with those mediums. We're going to talk about more about this in the upcoming classes that we have. So we would just hit create and it would create that document. I've done that already. I've set my dimensions to 550 by 400 and created this background in here. So now I need to get this background from Illustrator into Adobe Animate. And the way that I do that is I go into Animate and I go to File, once I've saved my Illustrator file, Import, and we're going to import it directly to the stage. So that's the white area here. So I need to find my file. So here's my country background AI Illustrator file, and I'm going to import it. Now we may see all the paths and layers that I have associated with that Adobe Illustrator file. That's fine. We're just going to take it all at once, so we're going to hit import. And because my dimensions match, it fits neatly into the stage. Okay? So now that I have it in there, I'm going to lock it because there's nothing I really need to do anymore with that at this stage. So now I'm going to double click on layer 1 and I'm going to call this background. It's always good to give our layers a name that means something to what it is that's happening in the animation. So that's created. I'm now going to create 2 new layers similar to what we had done in the intro video. And the top layer is going to be called guide. So I double click on that layer and I'm going to give it the name guide. Again, I could call it anything I want, but because the guide is what we're working with, again, it's good to give a naming convention that matches what it is that we're doing. I don't necessarily need this layer right now, so I'm going to delete that. All right, now what I need to do is I need to get the object that I'm going to animate into Illustrator as well. And I've created it, or sorry, into Animate. I've created it in Illustrator, and here it is, a biplane. So I'm going to import that as well into my animation. So the reason why it wasn't going to let me do that is because this layer is locked, so there's nothing I can do to it. So I'm going to go File, Import to Stage, and it's in here. Here's my biplane, and open. Here are all the objects that are associated with that Illustrator file, and I'm just going to hit Import. All right. See, it's overwritten my guide layer, so that's fine. All I'm going to do is double click on layer 1. I'm going to call this biplane, and I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to call that guide. So again, have the guide layer at the very top of your timeline. So my plane's a little bit big, so I'm going to select it, and I'm going to use the transform tool, which is the third one down from the top, and I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller. If I hold down the shift key while I click and drag in a corner, it holds the proportions. So it makes it the same size, but just makes it smaller. That's good there. I can live with that. All right. So in my guide, I'm going to lock my biplane as well. In my guide, I'm going to draw the path that I want my plane to follow. So if I select the brush tool, and I'm going to change it to a black, doesn't really matter. We're going to turn the color of this off later. But so I'm going to have my plane come in. It's going to do a couple of rolls and fly out of frame. All right. So what I need to do now is take my biplane. I've locked it, so I have to unlock it. Click on it. And similar to the last video, we have to make it a symbol. So that's either F8 or go to modify, convert to symbol. We're going to leave it as a movie clip, so give it the prefix MC, and we'll call it biplane. So it's now a movie clip, okay? On our guide layer, what we need to do is tell Animate that the path that I've drawn, I need to convert it to a guide so that my plane will follow it. So selecting the guide layer, we right click, go to guide. It changes the symbol a little bit. And all we're going to do is take our biplane layer, click and drag it to the right. So again, it idents underneath the guide layer and changes the guide layer to now to a symbol that looks like an animation path. So guide is now over top of biplane. Biplane is slightly indented. So let's go, let's say frame 45. And on all of these layers, I want to put a keyframe. So I select them and I either hit F6 or go to, I believe it's insert, timeline, keyframe, or we've gotten used to just using the shortcut keys, which is F6. Perfect. So we have an animation that is 45 frames long for all of our layers. So I'm just going to click out of there. So I deselect everything. And what I want to do is select the first frame of my biplane and move this white dot over to where it snaps to the beginning of our path that we want it to follow. Go to our last keyframe and do the same. Move it to the last frame and have it snap on the end of the path that we have it following. Okay? So the last thing to do is just to select all of the keyframes and the frames in between on the biplane layer, right click, and we're going to create a classic tween. So now we've got the biplane following the path. If I just scrub the playhead, that we've created. Now it's working, it looks good, but it's a little awkward. Notice that in this case, the plane is just it's falling, it's going up, and then it seems to be falling. It's not actually looking like it's flying. With this path select, or with this layer selected, we're going to go over to our properties tab that should be showing. If it's not, you can select it here at the top. And one of the options that we're going to select is orientate along path. So if I click on that, it's now going to try to follow this path. It's slightly out of whack. So let's just click on a frame, and we're going to use our transform tool again. And we're just going to rotate it so it follows that path. So now it goes up. What we could do is at any one of these, enter a keyframe, F6, and change the orientation of that. So if we scrub back, you'll notice it seems more logical the way that it's following the path. So when it gets too out of whack, we just hit F6 and we change the direction of it. So it's a little bit off there. We'll add another keyframe and just rotate it so that it looks normal the way that we want it to be. So now our plane is following the path, and we can adjust this as needed. F6. There we go. All right. So this is our second video where we have it following a path. And now we're going to talk about the last part of this. So join me in the next video.